The clock on the kitchen wall was the loudest thing in the house. Tick-tock. 2:17 a.m. The little ranch house at the edge of Denver sat in a pool of sodium yellow streetlight, the snow on the curb pushed back into gray piles. Inside, the lights were off, but the kitchen still smelled faintly of butter and maple syrup. A frying pan with a grease sheen leaned in the sink. On the table, one paper plate with a smear of chocolate sauce and a half-finished drawing in crayon waited where a child had fallen asleep hours earlier. Daniel Cole jerked awake on the couch, with a hand clutching his chest. The dream clung to him. Jet engines' fluorescent light, a crowd at the Denver airport, Emily standing at the far end of the terminal with a backpack, and Lily's stuffed bear tucked under her arm, sneakers tapping the tiles, as she rose up on her toes to see over people. He was running toward her, yelling her name, his boots slipping on polished floor. Every time he got close, the light shifted white and sharp. The chatter of travelers turned into the hiss of oxygen and the slow, terrible drag of a flat line. His hand dragged along the couch cushion, searching his hip for weight and metal that were not there. For a second, he felt the phantom grip of a sidearm, and the absence hit like a punch. He forced air into his lungs and stared into the dark. The living room was only a few steps wide. Second-hand coffee table, the TV on its thrift store stand, the hallway a black stripe leading to two doors. Lily slept behind one of them. The other, the room that used to be his and Emily's, stood half open, a sliver of gray. Tick-tock, 2:17. He swung his legs to the floor. The hardwood was cold under his bare feet. Sweat chilled on the back of his neck. For a long moment, he sat with his elbows on his knees, fingers pressed against his eyes until the ghost of the EKG line faded from his vision. Someone knocked on the front door. 3 quick raps, hesitant then harder. Every muscle in his back went tight. He straightened, without thinking the way his body had risen 100 times in desert tents and concrete barracks. His eyes flicked to the hallway again, to the line of light leaking from under Lily's door, then to the front door at the far side of the room. Nobody knocked at 2:17 a.m. in this neighborhood, not unless something was wrong. The knocking came again faster. Daniel moved silently across the living room, one hand brushing the edge of the couch, to feel his way, the other open and ready. He had no weapon he could reach in 2 seconds, nothing more lethal than the heavy ceramic mug on the coffee table. But his pulse was already sliding into a calmer rhythm, the old focus coming back like a song he had not played in years. He leaned to the side of the door and peered through the peephole. A woman stood on the tiny concrete porch, hugging her coat around herself against the Colorado cold. The porch light caught the side of her face. One eye was swollen purple, spreading into blue. There was dried blood at the corner of her mouth. Her dark hair stuck damply to her forehead, her breath fogged in short, sharp bursts. She kept glancing back over her shoulder toward the dark strip of alley between houses. Her knuckles hovered near the door, already pale from the cold. She looked like she had been running for a long time and had finally run out of places to go. Daniel felt his jaw clench. He stayed where he was, turned, his head listened. The neighborhood was quiet. No engine idling, no gravel crunching under boots, just the distant hum of the highway and the soft hiss of wind moving through the pines behind the houses. "Come on," the woman whispered, barely audible through the door. "Please." He undid the deadbolt and slid the chain to its limit. The door opened 3 inches, just enough for the cold to slip in like a hand across his bare feet. "Ma'am, it's 2 a.m, he said, voice low, steady. "You lost." Her eyes jumped to the crack. Up close, they were light brown and wild-ringed in red. "Are you Daniel Cole?" she asked. "Imbecile." A familiar tightness flickered in his chest. Names had weight when they came out of strangers' mouths at strange hours. "Who wants to know?" he said. "I saw your truck in the driveway," she said quickly. "The plates, the decal, you're Navy, right? Special warfare." His gaze flicked for half a second toward the side window, where his pickup sat under a silk of frost. On the back glass, under a film of dust, the Trident emblem still clung to the glass, faded but visible in the right light. "You got the wrong house," he said. Her hand shot out and caught the edge of the door, before he could swing it shut, fingers white with effort. "Please," she said. The word cracked in the middle. "They have my daughter." The chill in the doorway deepened. For a second, he swore the ticking in the kitchen stopped. "My daughter's bedroom is 10 feet from where you are standing," he said quietly. "You should lower your voice." Tears welled in her eyes, cutting clean tracks through the dirt on her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know how it sounds. I know I look like hell. but I didn't know where else to go. Her name is Ava. She's 9. 9. Close enough to Lily's 8 that the words landed in his stomach like ice. He shook his head to the answer already forming. Call 911. Call anyone who is not me. He had left that world, buried it with Emily's coffin and a folded flag he had never accepted. You need the police, he said, or the FBI. They handle this. I can't, she said. Her fingers tightened on the door. The knuckles were scraped raw. They have someone in the department. They told me if I call the cops, they will know. They will move her or they will kill her. They're moving her at 4. I heard them. Please. Behind his sternum, something old and ugly stirred the part of him that measured distances and times automatically. 2 hours. Less by the time he found the place, if the place was even real. The part of him that had planned raids in cities whose names still came back to him in the dark began fitting invisible pieces together before he could stop it. He forced his shoulders to relax, or at least to pretend. This is not a safe house, he said. I have a kid in here. You can't bring this to my door. Her gaze flicked past him into the dark behind his shoulder. You already have it at your door, she said, and her voice was suddenly very calm, very flat. You just opened it. Go home, he said. Find somewhere safe. In the morning, go to the federal building and tell them everything. If you had until morning, she said, would you wait? He hated that his breath hitched. The question lodged somewhere between his ribs. Listen, he began, but a small voice from the hallway cut him off. Dad. He closed his eyes for a heartbeat before turning. Lily stood at the edge of the hall, her unicorn pajamas too big for her thin frame, one hand rubbing sleep from her eyes, the other clutching a stuffed bear by the arm. Her hair stuck up on one side where she had rolled over it. Behind her, the nightlight in her room cast a soft blue halo around the doorway. Why is the door open? She asked, blinking against the porch light. It's cold. He stepped sideways, blocking most of her view, but not fast enough. Lily's eyes had already taken in the woman on the porch, the swollen eye, the split lip. Her small face changed, the last fog of sleep burning away. Are you hurt? Lily asked. Diabd. The woman swallowed. For a second, she looked as if she might crumble right there on the porch. I'm okay, she managed. I just got a little lost. It was the first lie Daniel had heard her tell. It's late, he said, keeping his voice soft for Lily's sake. She needs directions, that's all. Go back to bed, Bug. Lily did not move. Her gaze slid from the woman back up to her father's face, searching it the way only a child who has watched an adult fall apart knows how to search. She studied the tension in his jaw, the way his hand gripped the door, the way his shoulders were too square. Dad, she said quietly, if Mom was here, what would she do? The question landed heavier than any fist. For a heartbeat, the hallway shifted in his mind. The light went harsh and surgical. Emily lay on the table again, her hair pushed back, skin too pale, machines screaming behind her. Then the image was gone, and he was looking at his daughter's face, those same brown eyes Emily had, staring up at him, trusting him to answer. He cleared his throat. Go back to bed, Lil, he said. I'll be there in a minute. She hesitated, then nodded, the bear's head thumping softly against her leg as she turned. Her small feet padded down the hall, and her door clicked shut. The kitchen clock ticked, 2:18. Daniel closed the door until the chain pulled tight, and looked at the woman through the narrow gap. Her shoulders had dropped, as if simply seeing his daughter had broken something inside her. Start over, he said. His voice did not sound like it belonged to someone who fixed leaky sinks for $70 an hour. It sounded like someone he had promised not to be anymore. Tell me exactly what happened. Outside, the wind picked up brushing powdery snow across the street. In the kitchen, the smell of old French toast lingered faint and sweet, a reminder of a different life hanging in the air between them. She pulled in a shaky breath, as if just being asked to start at the beginning took effort. My name is Marissa Clark, she said. I live over in Lakewood, off Sheridan. I was driving home from a late shift 2 nights ago with my daughter. We never made it to the driveway. Her words came quicker now, pushed along by fear. He listened for rhythm, for lies, for the breaks where people usually slipped. Her gaze stayed on his, flicking only once toward the hallway where Lily's door had closed. They were waiting by the dumpsters at the back of our building, she said. White panel van. No plates. One of them waved me down, said I had something dragging under the car. I should have known. I got out. One of them grabbed me, one grabbed Ava, bag over my head, something over my mouth. It smelled like chemicals. I woke up in the dark. She swallowed. Her knuckles had gone from white to gray on the edge of the door. Daniel could see a faint residue of zip tie marks around her wrists, red half moons in the skin. Where? He asked. In some kind of warehouse, she said. Concrete floor. I could hear other women, some crying, one praying. I never saw them. They kept us separate. They kept Ava separate from me. Her voice went thin on the last words. She looked down for just a moment, as if steadying herself on her own shoes. They took us in and out of trucks, different places, mostly at night. I only saw the inside of the van. Then last night they brought Ava into the same building. How do you know it was your daughter? He asked. She sings when she's scared, Marissa said. She hums the Mickey Mouse song under her breath. She was doing it when they carried her past my door. For a heartbeat, the house felt too small. Daniel could hear the hum of the fridge behind him, the whisper of air through the vents, the faint rattle of the old window in the wind. How many men? He said. I saw 6, she said. There could be more. 2 of them always stayed near the office. One had a rifle. The others had pistols. They called the man in the office Jefe. He is the one who talks about moving product. Product? The word settled heavy between them. And you escaped, Daniel said. How? Her eyes fluttered shut, then opened again. He could see the calculation behind them. Who to trust, how much to admit. One of them got drunk, she said. He came into the room they kept me in. He tried to be clever with his hands. He unhooked one of the cuffs. I broke his nose with my head and ran. There was an exit by the loading dock he forgot to lock. Her voice shook now, anger braided into the fear. I heard them yelling behind me. I ran until my lungs burned. I hid behind trash cans when I saw headlights. I walked the rest. I saw your truck about an hour ago when I got to this street. The plates, the decal. I thought if anyone knew what to do, it would be you. Daniel let the silence sit for a few seconds. Snow scratched softly along the concrete outside. A car somewhere turned over, then faded. He opened the door a little wider, slid the chain off, but did not invite her in. The cold rolled in around their ankles. Why not go to the local station? He asked. Lakewood PD, the sheriff. You do not have to stand on some stranger's porch for this. Her expression darkened. They bragged about it, she said, about having a friend in uniform. They said if we ever talked, if we went to the cops, they would hear about it before the ink dried. One of them said the word detective like it was a joke. I do not know if it is true. I know they believed it. The headache that had started behind Daniel's eyes in the dream began to press again. He reached up and rubbed the bridge of his nose with his thumb. You are asking me to believe, he said slowly, that in the middle of the night you escaped from a group of armed traffickers who somehow have someone on the inside of local law enforcement, and the first thing you did was come here because you saw a sticker on my truck. Not the first thing, she said. The first thing I did was throw up in an alley. Then I ran until my legs stopped working. Then I saw your truck. He almost smiled. Almost. This is not a movie, he said. You need agencies, task forces, people with badges, not a guy who changes water heaters for a living. You are more than that, she said. You do not know me. I saw the way you moved when you came to the door, she said. I saw how you looked, past me, listened for cars, checked the shadows before you opened anything. That is not a plumber. Handyman, he said out of habit. Whatever you call it, she said. You checked threats first. I have been watched for 2 days by men who think women are stock. I know when someone is dangerous. Her eyes glistened. There was a steadiness there too, a hard line that had not cracked yet. I am not doing this again, he said quietly. I am not going back into that world. My daughter is down that hall. She has already had one parent die because I chose a mission over a flight home. Marissa stared at him. For a moment she looked more tired than afraid. I'm sorry, she said. I am sorry for what happened to your wife. Really. But if you do nothing, my kid dies because of the missions you did before. The men who took her, they came out of that world. I cannot reach into it. You can. He felt his teeth grind together. His tongue tasted metal. You need someone else, he said. There are other veterans. Other people who think they are still in the fight. Find one of them. Tonight you go to a motel, use a fake name, keep the lights off, and in the morning you go to the feds. I do not have until morning, she whispered. They said 4. They run trucks when traffic is dead. In and out before anyone blinks. He started to close the door, not slamming it, just easing it toward the frame. The way you close a lid over something you do not want to look at. Her hand slid from the edge, then flattened on the wood. She did not fight the motion this time. Her shoulders dropped. She looked smaller. If it was Lily, she said the name soft, careful, would you wait for an office to open? The door stopped. He had not told her his daughter's name. Daniel felt his stomach drop in a slow, heavy arc. He pictured Lily's drawings on the fridge, the messy loop of her letters. He pictured her standing in the hall a few minutes ago, hair sticking up, asking what her mother would do. He pictured Emily laughing in the kitchen, on a Sunday morning flower on her cheek, the smell of coffee and French toast curling around them. Now he pictured a van door sliding shut with Lily inside it. His fingers tightened on the doorknob until the metal bit his palm. "How do you know my daughter's name?" he asked. Marissa blinked confused, then realization flickered across her face. "You said it," she said. "When you talked to her, you called her Lily. I am not following you. I am begging you." He replayed the last few minutes in his head and found his own voice soft in the hall. "Go back to bed, Lil. I will be there in a minute." The fear in his chest shifted shape, less like an enemy and more like a mirror. He knew the answer to her question. He had known it before she asked. If someone took his child, he would not wait for daylight. He would not wait for paperwork. He would not wait at all. That was precisely why he had locked the gun away. Why he had turned in the Trident and moved to a quiet street where the loudest sound at night was a kitchen clock. He let out a slow breath that clouded in the cold air between them. "You said warehouse," he said at last. "By the river. Can you get me close?" She nodded quick, as if the motion alone could keep her upright. "There is a sign on the road," she said. "Old logistics company. Most of the windows are broken. There is a smokestack and a water tower. The river smell is strong when the wind blows right." He stepped back from the door, just enough to let her see past him, into the dim living room and the narrow hall. No farther. "You are not coming inside," he said, "but you are not leaving yet either." Her lips parted. "Does that mean you will help?" she asked. "It means I'm going to think," he said, "and you are going to stand there and answer every question I have, clearly." He glanced once more at the closed door at the end of the hall. The nightlight under the crack painted a faint blue line on the floor, a small steady glow in a dark house. Then he turned back to the woman on his porch, to the bruises on her face, and the way her hands shook, and the way she still stood there anyway, and he began to ask about streets and exits and the number of steps from one door to another. The questions came out of him in a calm, flat line, the way they used to in rooms a long way from Denver. "How big is this place?" "Big," Marissa said. "High ceiling, rows of shipping containers in the middle, offices on a raised platform along one side. There is a staircase. Metal. Windows. Most of them broken," she said. "On the second floor. Some boarded. I could see streetlights through the cracks when they moved me. Entrances. Big rolling door for trucks at the front. Smaller door by the loading dock on the side. That is where I ran. There is a door from the office to the outside too, I think. I heard it slam a few times." He nodded, filing each piece where it belonged in his head. "Cameras. I saw one above the big door," she said. "Red light blinking, maybe more, but I did not see them." "Inside," he said. "Do they watch the floor from the office?" "I heard them talking about the screens," she said, "laughing when someone fell. That might have been another place. They moved us. I am sorry." Her shoulders tensed as if she expected him to be angry at the gaps in her memory. He was not. Memory under stress did strange things. 3 clear details meant more than 10 fuzzy ones. "Smell," he said. "You mentioned the river." "It smells like wet metal and dead fish," she said, "like when the drains back up after rain. The floor was damp by the dock." He pictured it. Older industrial strip near the South Platte. Warehouses left behind when companies chased cheaper space farther out. Places with broken security and long, dark nights. "Cars," he said. "Trucks. Vans." 2 white vans, she said. 1 pickup, dark, loud muffler, license plates covered in mud. He listened until her voice began to sound thinner, stretched. Finally, he stepped back. "Wait here," he said. "Do not go into the yard. Do not stand in front of the windows. If anyone but me comes near this house, you run." "Where?" she asked. "Anywhere that is not here." Her lips pressed together. She nodded. He closed the door, fully slid the deadbolt into place, and engaged the chain again out of habit. For a moment, he leaned his forehead against the wood eyes shut. Tick, tock. He pushed himself away and moved down the hall, feet silent on the boards. The line of blue from Lily's nightlight still glowed under her door. He paused outside, hand on the frame, listening. Soft, even breaths. A small, sleepy sigh that twisted something in his chest and anchored it at the same time. He went past his daughter's room to his own. The master bedroom felt hollow, more storage than living space. A bed with plain sheets, one dresser, one chair. The closet door stuck slightly when he pulled it open, the track complaining under its breath. Coats and shirts hung in a uniform row. On the floor, under a stack of moving boxes that had never been unpacked, sat a brushed steel lockbox no bigger than a microwave. Dust filmed the top. On it, a thin line where his fingers had traced the edge once or twice without opening it. He knelt and pulled it toward him. The carpet burned against his bare knees. Up close, he could see the nick on the corner from when he had dropped it 3 years ago, the night he brought it home. His fingers hesitated on the dial. There was a moment stretched and fragile where he could still stand up, shove the box back into the dark, and walk away. Call someone else. Pretend he had never heard the name Ava. He set his jaw. 0, 5, 1, 2. The numbers fell into place with a soft, mechanical click. May 12th. Wedding date. Emily in a simple dress on a windy hill outside town. The sky so bright it hurt his eyes, her hand in his, her cheeks flushed with the cold and the weight of what they were promising. He lifted the lid. The smell hit him first. Oil gun metal, a faint ghost of leather. Beneath the foam padding lay the Glock, the finish worn at the edges from years of holsters that were now in a landfill somewhere. The slide rested forward, the magazine well empty. Beside it, 3 loaded magazines, their brass caps dull in the dim light. Under the tray lay a folded canvas vest, with ceramic plates lighter than he remembered, yet suddenly very heavy in his hands. On top of it, where he had left them, were 3 photographs. Emily laughing beside a campfire, hair and a knot soot on her nose. Emily, in a hospital bed, skin pale. Lily, a pink bundle on her chest, both of them looking exhausted and stunned and impossibly happy. The 3 of them on a blanket at a park, Lily a toddler between them reaching for his feet. He picked up the last photo and held it for a few seconds, the edges bending under his grip. Something pinched behind his eyes. He set it carefully on the top shelf of the closet where it would be hard to step on, harder to ignore. He took the pistol out. It fit his hand as if no time had passed. The slide drew back with a familiar resistance, the chamber gleaming empty. He checked it without even thinking of the sequence, then seated a magazine with a solid smack and eased the slide forward. The weight settled into his palm, into places in his muscles that had not forgotten their work. He slipped the extra magazines into the slots in the vest, then shrugged the vest over his head. The straps hung looser than they once had. Less gym, more late nights hunched over invoices and science projects. He tightened them until the plates sat snug against his chest. In the bathroom, the mirror over the sink reflected a man he knew and did not. Brown hair starting to gray at the temples. Lines around his eyes carved deeper by the last 3 years. Shoulders still broad, but there was a softness at the edges civilian life had given him. The vest under the faded navy t-shirt pushed his shoulders back. The Glock at his belt under the hem of the shirt pulled his posture into an old alignment. For a second he saw himself as a stranger might, not the guy who fixed the neighbor's garbage disposal. Something sharper, harder. He turned off, the light walked back down the hallway and stopped outside Lily's room again. He cracked the door just enough to look in. She was a small shape in a tangle of blankets, hair spread across the pillow, the stuffed bear tucked in under her chin. The glow from the nightlight painted her cheek in soft blue. "I will be back." He breathed so low it was almost no sound at all. He closed the door until only the thin blue line showed at the bottom, then went to the kitchen. Marissa's phone lay on the counter where he had set it, a cheap model case chipped at the edges. He woke the screen thumb sliding over the smeared glass. Ava had its own contact. He opened the thread. The last message had a week-old timestamp, a picture of a half-eaten ice cream cone, and a misspelled complaint about math homework. Daniel typed with his thumb. "Mom's friend is coming to get you. Do what he says. You can trust him." He stared at the words, then erased his name, erased anything that pointed back to this house, and hit send. A thin bar crawled across the top of the screen. Delivered. He went into the settings and cleared the sent message, then the recent call list. It would not stop anyone determined, but it would blur the path. Marissa was where he had left her when he opened the door again. She hugged herself against the cold breath, a pale cloud. Her eyes jumped to the dark shape of his shirt, the way it hung a little stiffer over his torso, then to the way his right arm stayed a fraction closer to his body than his left. "You changed?" she said. "Grab your keys," he said. "We are taking your car. Lights off when we get close. You park where I tell you, then do what I tell you." She nodded quickly, as if afraid he might change his mind if she moved too slow. "Thank you," she said. "Do not thank me yet," he said. He stepped out onto the porch, locked the door behind him, and checked the knob twice. The October air cut through the cotton of his shirt and the canvas of the vest bracing. The street lay quiet snowbanks glowing under the streetlight. Somewhere in the distance the river moved in the dark, carrying cold water past brick and steel and concrete. Marissa hurried across the yard toward a silver Honda sedan parked under a bare-limbed tree. Daniel followed the weight at his waist and chest, an old, unwelcome certainty. The Honda's engine turned over with a tired growl. Marissa gripped the wheel so hard her wrists shook. Daniel slid into the passenger seat and laid the Glock on his thigh, for a second feeling the weight, before tucking it inside his waistband at the small of his back, shirt pulled over it. "Seatbelt," he said. She clicked it into place, hands barely steady enough to find the buckle. They pulled away from the curb tires crunching over frozen slush. The streetlights thinned as they left the neighborhood. Houses gave way to strip malls with dark windows and empty parking lots, then to low warehouses and fenced yards. The city's glow fell behind them, replaced by scattered sodium lamps and the flat black of industrial zoning. The heater spat out lukewarm air. A song came on the radio, some overproduced pop ballad, then vanished when Marissa stabbed the power button. They drove in silence for several blocks. The clock on the dashboard read 2:41. "How old is she really?" Daniel asked. "Ava," Marissa said. 9, 4th grade. She hates gym class. She pretends to like broccoli because she thinks it makes her look grown up. Her voice crumpled around the details. "What about her father?" he asked. "Gone," she said, "before she was born. He wanted to be a musician in LA. I wanted diapers that did not leak and a rent check that cleared. I picked the baby." He nodded once, watching the streets slide by. Most store signs were dark. The occasional gas station glowed like an island. "You should have gone with her," he said. "You sound like my sister," Marissa muttered. "She has been saying that for years." They turned onto a wider road. Fewer houses here, more chain link and barbed wire. The faint orange glow of the city hung over everything, thinning toward the horizon. "Slow down," Daniel said. She eased off the gas. "Where from here?" "There is an overpass coming up," she said. "Turn off just before it. 2 blocks down the road, dead ends at the river. The warehouse is on the left. Big rusted sign that says Condor Logistics." He watched for the shape of the overpass in the distance, the dark lines of its pylons cutting across the night sky. When he saw them, he pointed. There. She took the turn. The pavement grew rougher patchwork repairs and potholes. Weeds pushed up through cracks near the curb. A chain-link fence ran along one side, topped with loops of tired razor wire. "Lights off," he said. She turned them off. The world outside the windshield dimmed the car, now a shadow moving through the dark, guided only by the faint spill from distant lamps. Her knuckles went white again. "I cannot see," she whispered. "You can," he said. "Look at the edges, the reflectors. Keep it straight." They crept forward. The river smell reached them faint at first, then stronger, a cold, muddy scent that slipped in around the windows. Somewhere out there, water moved past concrete piers and piles of trash unseen. A hulking shape emerged in the dark on the left. 2 stories of stained brick and corrugated metal additions. Broken windows gaped like missing teeth. A tall, rusted smokestack leaned at a slight angle, and beside it, a squat water tower sat on spindly legs, a faded logo barely visible. Condor Logistics. The letters on the front sign were cracked and peeling. Only the outline remained where the paint had flaked away. "Stop," Daniel said softly. She braked. The car rolled to a halt behind a cluster of bare-limbed trees. From here, they had a diagonal view of the warehouse and the cracked concrete lot in front of it. One yellow security light buzzed above a roll-up door. Under it, a white panel van sat with its nose pointed toward the street. Another vehicle, a dark pickup, lurked along the side of the building, its windows dark. Daniel scanned the lot. No moving shadows, no smokers clustered near the door. That did not mean much. The night had a way of hiding teeth. He pointed down the block. "Pull up 2 more houses," he said. "On the right. Park at the curb facing away. If you need to leave in a hurry, you do not want to back up." She did as he said. The Honda eased forward, then drifted to the side and stopped. A thin layer of frost on the windshield caught the streetlight and turned it into a pale sheen. "Turn the engine off," he said. "Keep the keys where you can reach them." She cut the ignition. The heater died, leaving a hush and the tick of cooling metal. "Listen carefully," Daniel said. "You stay in this car unless someone is about to drag you out of it. If that happens, you run. You do not go toward the warehouse. You do not yell my name. You do not do anything heroic." Her throat bobbed. "Where would I run?" she asked. "Back the way we came," he said. "Toward houses, toward lights. Knock on every door if you have to. Someone will answer." "And Ava," she said. "What do I tell her if she makes it here before you?" He paused. "You tell her to get in the back seat and lock the doors," he said. "You tell her not to open them for anyone but you. You tell her I am working on it." Marissa nodded, eyes bright. "I am calling 911 once you are inside," she said. "From the gas station at the main road, like you said." "Use a payphone if there is one," he said. "Do not give them your name if you can help it." He opened the door. The cold wrapped around his legs. He stood closing the door quietly, then leaned down to meet her eyes again through the glass. "If I am not back by 5, he said, "do not wait on this street." "Where will you be?" she whispered. "Not your problem then," he said. He pulled his jacket tighter around himself and started down the sidewalk toward the warehouse, staying near the shadowed side of the street. The air pressed cold against his cheeks. His breath ghosted ahead of him. As he moved, his mind folded the layout into something simple. Front entrance with camera, truck bay with light, side loading dock near the river, probably with less attention, office elevated inside with sight lines over the floor. He had walked into worse setups with less information. He cut across the street where the asphalt dipped just before the lot feet silent on the cracked surface. A piece of glass crunched under his boot. He froze, waited listening. Nothing. The river's whisper. A distant dog. The buzz of that one yellow light. He slipped into the shadow cast by the warehouse wall. Up close, the bricks were darker damp near the ground. Graffiti sprawled across them in white and neon spray paint. Names and tags layered on top of each other. The truck bay door was closed, a steel slab with streaks of rust running down from the hinges. Above it, a camera sat on a rusty bracket lens pointed down at the lot. A small red indicator glowed on its side. He kept his face turned away, hood up, moving past into deeper shadow along the side of the building. The side yard held stacks of pallets and a few rusted drums half buried in weeds. A narrow sidewalk hugged the wall, leading toward the rear. At the far corner, a smaller metal door waited, paint-peeling handle streaked where hands had grabbed it over the years. Daniel crouched behind a pile of pallets and watched. Movement, a flash of orange near the door. He shifted, squinting. A man leaned against the wall, one foot braced behind him, a cigarette burning between his fingers. Smoke curled up into the cold air. His jacket was open over a t-shirt, Hans bare despite the temperature. A pistol rode his hip in a cheap nylon holster. He took a drag, eyes half closed, then pushed off the wall and walked a lazy circuit along the side up to the corner, back to the door. Not much discipline in the stride. No radio at his shoulder. This was not a professional security guard. Daniel watched him complete the loop, twice counting silently. 20 steps to the corner, 10 seconds lean, 20 back. On the third return, when the man stopped near the door and leaned his head back against the metal, Daniel moved. He slipped from behind the pallets, keeping his body low, feet finding quiet patches between gravel and debris. The wind covered what little sound he made. The guard's head turned slightly, sensing something, or just listening to the night. Daniel was already close. He closed the final distance in 3 long strides. His left hand clamped over the man's mouth, fingers digging into the stubble along his jaw. His right arm wrapped around the neck bicep against carotid forearm, against the other side wrist, locked behind the head. The man jerked, eyes flying open, cigarette dropping to the ground. He clawed at Daniel's arm legs, kicking heels, scraping the concrete. Daniel tightened his grip and shifted his weight, keeping them both upright, using the guard's body as a shield in case anyone glanced this way. The struggle lasted seconds. Then the man's knees softened. His weight sagged. Daniel held on a few beats more, feeling for the slack, then eased him down behind the pallets, lowering rather than dropping. The man's breath rasped once, then fell into shallow, steady pulls. Unconscious, not dead. Daniel checked quickly for weapons, sliding the pistol from the holster and tucking it into his own belt behind the Glock. A cheap folding knife came from the man's pocket. He set it aside out of reach. He pulled the guard's arms behind his back and used a plastic zip tie from his vest to bind the wrists, another for the ankles. The man would wake up with a hell of a headache and cold concrete under his cheek. That was his best-case scenario tonight. The cigarette had burned itself out on the ground, a small spiral of smoke fading into the air. Daniel smoothed his jacket, exhaled, and stepped up to the metal door. He put his ear against it. Inside, the warehouse hummed faintly with distant machinery noise, more likely a refrigerator or a small generator than any large equipment. He could hear muffled music, bass thumping, and the murmur of male voices not close to this door. He tried the handle. It turned. The door opened a few inches with a soft scrape. A breath of air washed over him, colder even than outside, carrying the smell of dust oil, old wood, and something else. Sweat. People. He slipped inside and eased the door shut behind him until the latch caught. Darkness folded around him. A few bulbs high overhead cast cones of weak yellow light, leaving big stretches of shadow between them. His pupils adjusted, pulling shapes out of black. The warehouse space was wide and deep. Metal pillars marched down the length of it. In the center, shipping containers stood in double rows, stacked two high, mostly blue and red, their doors facing narrow aisles. Some had numbers stenciled on the sides. Some bore the logos of companies that had gone under years ago. Along the far wall, an office structure jutted out over the floor built of plywood and cheap glass, a balcony with a metal railing running along its front. Light spilled from the windows. Shadows moved inside. Laughter floated down in bursts. On the closer end, near where he stood, a wooden staircase climbed to the office. The steps looked old and sounded older, not his first choice. He stayed on the ground. He moved along the wall, keeping his back to the concrete eyes scanning the aisles between containers. He saw no one on the floor, no patrols, no idle guards. The men upstairs felt secure. His boots made almost no sound on the concrete. Every now and then, a bit of grit shifted under his weight and clicked. Each time he paused and listened until his own heartbeat stopped ringing in his ears. He passed a stack of crates and a pile of shrink-wrapped boxes with labels in Spanish. The smell of river water seeped in from somewhere behind the container wall, mixed with the sharp tang of cleaning chemicals and the sour hint of old sweat. From beyond the second row of containers, from somewhere toward the middle of the maze, came a small sound. Not music, not a man's voice, a thin hitch in the air, the faintest echo of breathing that tried not to be heard. Daniel froze, head tipped slightly, listening. The warehouse stretched long and dark ahead of him, pathways vanishing between steel boxes. He let the sound guide him one careful step at a time, moving toward the center of the maze. He let the small sound separate itself from the warehouse hum. There, a catch of breath, a swallow, the almost inaudible shift of cloth on metal. He eased between two containers, their blue sides rising over him like walls. The air cooled in the narrow aisle. Ahead, another row cut across, forming a T. He paused at the junction, listening again. On the left, nothing but the distant thump of bass from the office. On the right, that fragile thread of sound, a tiny muffled sniff. He went right. Here, the containers were closer together. Some had locks hanging from their doors. Some stood slightly open, empty, dark mouths. Stenciled letters and shipping numbers loomed faintly in the low light. Near the middle of the row, he saw it. A container with a door painted a faded green, its padlock newer than the others, shiny brass catching a drop of light from a bulb far overhead. Behind that metal skin came the sound again, barely there. He stepped up to the door and laid his palm flat against it. Cold. The steel carried a slight vibration from the music in the distant office. He leaned close, pressed his ear to it, held breath on the other side. Then quietly, a voice. "Mom?" The word was so soft it almost did not make it through the wall. He knocked once with his knuckles. "Not your mom?" he said, voice pitched low. "A friend of hers." Silence. Then a shuffle, as if someone sat up too fast and smacked a shoulder into the wall. "If you are real," the voice whispered, higher and thinner now, "say her name." "Ava," he said. He checked the aisle behind him, then the catwalk of the office above, listening for any change in tone, any pause in the laughter. Nothing. "The woman who sent me is hurt and scared," he said, keeping his mouth close to the door. "She walked a long way to find someone who could help. That is why I'm here." On the other side of the metal, something scraped. "They said she is dead," the girl said. They said she was too slow and they put her in the river. They lie, he said. It is what they do. She is not in the river. His hand went to his vest fingers, finding the small bolt cutter clipped inside. Not the heavy jaws he would have liked, but enough for a cheap lock. You are going to hear a noise, he said. It will be loud. It is just the lock. You stay back from the door until I tell you. Are you a cop? She asked. Be geest. No, he said. I am the next best thing I could find on short notice. He stepped back enough to swing the cutters into place around the lock. Their metal teeth bit down. He gripped the handles, braced one end against his thigh, and squeezed. The brass gave with a sharp crack. The sound reverberated through the steel around him, a gunshot in the close air. He froze, cutters still in his hands, every muscle listening. Up in the office, the music did not stop. The laughter did not hitch. Someone shouted something over the bass, a crude joke, and got a roar in return. He lowered the broken lock to the floor and nudged the door with his fingers. It stuck for a second, then squealed on its hinges as it opened. Inside the container was a long, narrow box of shadow. The light from the aisle slid only a few feet in. The rest remained a gray gloom. He smelled old cardboard sweat, the chemical lemon of cheap cleaner, and under that the raw salt of fear. A small shape crouched in the far corner, bare knees pulled up under a chin, thin arms wrapped tight. A mop of dark hair unbrushed and tangled, a purple hoodie smeared with dirt, tennis shoes without laces. When his eyes adjusted, he saw the eyes, too large in the thin face, too old. Ava, he said. She did not answer. She was watching his hands. You got a name you prefer? He asked. That startled something like a reflexive smile out of her there and gone. Ava, she said. He nodded. All right, Ava, here is what happens. We stand up, we walk out, we do not scream, we do not run unless I say run. If I say down, you get flat. If I say stay, you glue yourself to the floor. She unfolded slowly, each joint stiff from hours in one position. When she stood, he saw she was smaller than he had expected. 9, like Marissa had said, but thin even for that. Her cheeks were hollowed under the smears of grime. Are you going to shoot them? She asked. Only if they leave me no other choice, he said. Her gaze flicked to his side where the outline of the Glock under his shirt was barely visible. She did not flinch. She had seen hard men with guns already. My mom does not like guns, she said. Mine did not either, he said. We will try to keep this quick. He stepped out into the aisle and motioned her to stay just behind him, close enough that if he stopped short, she would hit his back. Her shoes whispered on the floor. They moved down the row the same way he had come, but slower. His senses split now between listening for danger and tracking the small presence at his back. Near the end of the aisle, he held up a hand. She stopped without needing a word. He leaned out just enough to scan the open space of the warehouse. Office lights still burned above. The balcony was busy shadows. No one had come to the floor. They headed for the side wall, where the door he had used waited in darkness. They made it 3 aisles before something shifted. Not sound, light. For a heartbeat, the yellow glare from the office windows dimmed, then brightened. The music cut off in mid-verse. The laughter stopped. A chair scraped loudly. Turn that back on, a male voice barked. I was listening to that. No, shut up, another voice said sharper. Did you hear that? Daniel's heart thudded once heavy. He pushed Ava back into the shadow between 2 containers with a gentle pressure on her shoulder. Hands on your ears, he murmured. Stay small. She slid down the side of the container, tucking herself tight, arms wrapped over her head. He slipped forward to the edge of the aisle and watched the office. Silhouettes moved behind the glass. Someone crossed to the light switch. The overhead bulbs brightened. Another figure went to the balcony railing and looked down at the floor hands on the metal. Carlos, the man called. His voice carried easily. You still breathing down there? Silence on the warehouse floor. Hey, stop screwing around. Answer me. Daniel scanned the pallets near the side door in his mind, the unconscious guard hidden behind them. Wrists bound. No answer would come. Get your lazy ass up and check on the cargo, the man said. Jefe wants a status before we load. No one moved. Then a different set of footsteps pounded along the office balcony down the inside stair. The metal steps rang under the weight. Daniel checked the distance. From the bottom of those stairs to the green container was maybe 30 yards, with a straight line of sight between the stacks. He went back to Ava. Change of plan, he said. We have to move faster. Her eyes were wide in the dim. She nodded, teeth worrying her lower lip. You see that door over there? he said, pointing past the containers toward the thin glow leaking around the side entrance where he had come in. Metal by the pallets. She peeked. She nodded again. That door goes to the outside. Once I tell you, you run for it. You do not look back. When you get outside, you go straight and then left. Stay low behind whatever you can. 2 blocks down there is a silver Honda on the right side of the street. Your mom is in it. You get in the back seat and lock the door. Do not open it for anyone who is not her. What about you? She whispered. I will be behind you, he said. Now, if someone gets in your way, you do not talk to them. You go around. He turned her face toward his with a finger under her chin until her eyes met his. Say it back to me, he said. Door straight left, silver Honda, back seat, lock the doors, she recited almost too fast. He nodded. Good. When I say go, you go. If you hear something loud, you go faster. Footsteps on the concrete now. The man from the office reached the floor. Daniel saw his shadow long before he saw him. He wore a leather jacket over a shirt, untucked jeans boots that had seen real work. A pistol sat at the small of his back. He walked down the center aisle, head turning, as he passed each locked container. Closer. Daniel eased the Glock from under his shirt. The weight was solid, familiar in his hand. He took a breath, filled his lungs, let half of it out. The man reached the row where Ava had been. The hell, he muttered. His hand grabbed the lock that was no longer there. Metal clanged against metal. The empty hasp swung under his fingers. He pulled the door open. The container yawned, echoing. Jefe, he shouted. We got a problem. Noise exploded from the office. Chairs scraping, voices, commands in Spanish. Multiple sets of footsteps clattered toward the stairs. Go, Daniel said. Ava ran. She shot out of the shadow like a small animal flushed from cover shoes slapping the concrete. She sprinted along the aisle he had pointed out, arms tight to her sides, head down. Her hoodie flapped behind her. Hey! The man at the open container yelled. Hey, stop! His hand went for the pistol at his back. Daniel stepped out enough to see his center mass and fired. The warehouse amplified the shot into a boom. The man jerked sideways, hit in the shoulder, and spun his gun, dropping from numb fingers. He crashed into the side of the container, slid to the floor, swearing. Up on the balcony, bodies crowded the railing. There, someone shouted, Girl, door! A shot cracked from above. Concrete spat near Ava's feet. She flinched but did not stop. Another round whined off the steel of a nearby container with a hot metallic whine. Daniel sent 2 more controlled shots toward the office windows. Glass shattered. Men ducked. Someone screamed. Get down there! A voice roared. Now! Boots hammered on the stairs. At least 3, maybe 4 sets. Another door slammed open somewhere on the far side of the warehouse. Daniel moved sideways, keeping his body between the office angle and the path Ava had taken. He saw her reach the side door, small hands grabbing at the handle. For a 6-second, he thought it might be locked after all. The handle turned. The door flew open. Cold river air poured in. She slipped through, vanishing into the night. He exhaled a breath he had not known he was holding, and dove behind the nearest forklift, crouching low behind its steel frame, as the first of the men from the stairs hit the floor. The forklift took the first rounds with a sharp metallic thud. Sparks spat off the frame. A tire hissed as a bullet chewed through rubber. Daniel tucked in tight behind the engine block. The air smelled of oil and hot metal. Concrete dust tickled his nose. He counted the shots. 3 from the man nearest the stairs. 2 more from farther back. 1 wild round ricocheted off a container and went whining into the rafters. These were not soldiers. They fired too fast, too high, fingers clenched around triggers instead of tapping them. He rolled to one knee, leaned a fraction out, and saw a shape moving along the edge of a stack of boxes, pistol extended in a comic book stance. Daniel put his sights on the man's hip and squeezed. The round took the leg just above the knee. The man howled and dropped guns skittering across the floor. He is there, someone shouted, voice breaking. Another figure burst from behind a crate, trying to sprint across the open gap toward a stack of pallets. Daniel fired twice. 1 shot missed clean. The second clipped the man's shoulder and spun him sideways into the concrete. He lay there, groaning, hands pressed to his arm. Bullets chewed at the forklift again. 1 punched through the thin metal beside Daniel's head, slapping the ground near his foot. He ducked, lower jaw tight. He could feel his heart pounding, but it was not wild. It had a measured beat matching the slow in and out of his breath. The edges of his vision sharpened. The space around him seemed to separate into lanes and angles, pathways of shot and cover. A head popped up behind a crate, eyes wide above the barrel of a pistol. Daniel fired once. The crate splintered. The head vanished. Up on the balcony, a face appeared at the edge of a broken office window, a rifle barrel following. Daniel snapped a shot at the glass. It blew inward. The face dropped like a puppet with strings cut. Shouts in Spanish overlapped. Get around him. Watch the door. He hit Luis. One voice cut through the rest, lower, steadier, soaked in command. Stop shooting like idiots. The gunfire stuttered, then ceased. Echoes fell away into the rafters. The sudden silence throbbed against Daniel's eardrums. He stayed where he was, one knee down, Glock-ready ears straining. His lungs pulled in air that tasted of burned powder and concrete. Footsteps crossed the office above. One set, not hurried. The murmur of argument tracked after it, muffled by glass and plywood. Jefe, we should go. Not yet. You saw what he did. Not yet. A door opened, closed. The footsteps descended the metal stairs. The staircase sang under the weight, a regular clank that carried across the warehouse. No one else followed. Daniel leaned closer to the forklift frame and angled himself to see the bottom of the stairs. His finger rested alongside the trigger, not on it. The man who came down did not look like the others. He was lean, maybe late 30s, with hair cut short at the sides and longer on top, swept back. His clothes were simple: dark jeans, black boots, a charcoal button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled to the forearms. Over his shoulder hung a sling. On that sling rested a rifle. An AR variant, compact, the barrel tipped with a flash hider. His hands rested on it loosely, fingers not near the trigger, but close enough. He walked out from the bottom of the stairs as if he owned the floor, eyes scanning the shadows without hurry. He did not favor either side. His posture did not scream threat, but it hummed with it. He paused near the fallen man, clutching his shoulder, and glanced down. Get a tourniquet on that, he said in Spanish. If you bleed out, it will be because you are stupid, not because of him. The injured man laughed weakly through his teeth. The others stayed behind cover, waiting. The newcomer stepped farther into the open turning until he faced the forklift. His eyes slid over it and settled, precise, almost amused. Senor Cole, he called, his accent light, his English crisp. You picked a good piece of cover. The engine block is an old favorite. Daniel did not answer. He shifted his weight, listening for movement on his flanks. Nothing yet. You are thinking you can wait me out, the man said. You hope your little friend made it to the door and that her feet can take her the rest of the way. You hope I slip. I had those same hopes once. He let the rifle hang, both hands visible. He lifted them slightly, palms out. I am going to step a little closer, he said. If you want to shoot me, at least we will finally look each other in the eye. Daniel slid along the forklift, just enough to see him. He brought the Glock up, sights aligning on the man's center chest. Their gazes met across the open span of concrete. Up close, the man had the kind of face that might have been handsome without the tension pulling it tight. Thin nose, strong jaw, a faint scar bisecting his left eyebrow. His eyes were dark, steady. You do not remember me, he said. Should I? Daniel said. The man smiled, a small, crooked thing that did not reach his eyes. Not me, he said. Men like you do not remember the little people. You remember coordinates, call signs, mission names, not faces. But you remember what you did. He took another slow step forward, then another, until he reached a paint mark on the floor, a faded red line that might once have marked a loading zone. The muzzle of his rifle stayed pointed at the ground. 10 years ago, he said, there was a market in Fallujah. Bread, fruit, cheap cigarettes, kids running around, men arguing about soccer. It was a good day. Sunny, the kind of day my mother would have said was a blessing. The name cracked open a door in Daniel. Fallujah called up heat waves and dust, the smell of diesel and trash, the constant rattle and low boom of a city at war. He did not let it show on his face. A patrol came through, the man continued. Armored trucks, men with helmets and glasses and guns. People moved to the sides like they always did. Then someone fired from a rooftop. 1 shot. 2. He held up that many fingers, palm turned toward himself. When the echoes were still in the air, the men in helmets opened fire in all directions. They did not see who they were shooting. They did not care. His eyes did not leave Daniel's. You were there. Daniel's throat felt dry. I have been a lot of places, he said. Fallujah was part of the job. The man nodded slowly. It was your job, he said, to come into my streets and turn them into shooting galleries. He tapped his own chest with 2 fingers. "My name is Diego Morales," he said. "My brother's name was Mateo. He was 22. He drove a truck delivering flatbread to market. That day he parked his truck and went to buy cigarettes. When the shooting started, he ran. His hand slipped from his chest and hung at his side. He ran straight into the angle of your fire," Diego said. "You hit him in the back, twice. He died on the pavement with his cheek on the warm stone and his hands empty." A picture rose unbidden in Daniel's mind. The mission had been a blur of radio chatter and muzzle flashes. They had taken fire from a rooftop overlooking the market. Return fire had been automatic, controlled at least on his end, but into a crowded space. Afterward, medics had moved among the bodies that lay in the dust, checking pulses, closing eyes. There had been a young man in a gray shirt, jeans soaked dark, no weapon near his hands, just a crushed pack of cigarettes, 1 filter bent. Daniel remembered that detail because it had made him feel sick. He did not remember the man's face, not until now when Diego's features offered a matured version. "The report said 17 civilian casualties," Diego said. "The men in suits called it regrettable. The man who signed it wrote that the soldiers involved followed protocol." He tilted his head. "You signed that report, did you not?" Daniel exhaled. "I signed what I was given," he said. "I wrote what I saw." "You did not see my mother," Diego said. "You did not see what was left of her when they brought my brother home in the back of a pickup because the ambulance was too busy. You did not see my family after that or the years that came. You moved on to the next city, the next rooftop, the next mistake." His voice had not risen. That made it worse. "You think you are the only one who lost something?" Daniel said the words sliding out sharper than he intended. "You think we came back whole?" For a moment, silence stretched between them, thick as fog. "No," Diego said at last. "I know you did not. I know you brought ghosts home. I am counting on them." He took a small step to the right, toward the unconscious guard near the pallets, putting himself in a position where the men hidden behind crates could see him more clearly. "You put your toys in a box," he said. "You moved to a quiet street. You told yourself you were done. You buried your wife and you wrapped your guilt around your daughter like a blanket." Daniel's grip on the Glock tightened. The safety ridges under his fingers dug into his skin. Diego's eyes flicked toward the side of the warehouse where the door to the night stood. No sign of Ava. Her absence there was its own presence. "When I found you," Diego said, "you were fixing pipes and eating pancakes with your kid. You were almost convincing. I could have let you stay that way. Many of us tell ourselves stories. We pretend time changes things." He shrugged a small lift of one shoulder. "But I could not leave it," he said. "I watched my mother die without a son. I watched my neighborhood die without any apology. Someone had to balance the weight, so I made a plan." He raised one hand, counting on his fingers as he spoke. "First, I needed to find the man who pulled the trigger. Records, units, tours. Not so hard if you know who to ask. Second, I needed a pressure point. Your daughter would have been an obvious one, but I am not a monster. I do not hurt children for the sake of hurting them." He paused. "Not if I can avoid it." The words lay there cold and honest. "So, I found a different way," he said. "I found a woman who owed the wrong people money. I found her child. I let those wrong people take an interest. I arranged for a van and a warehouse and a timetable. I left breadcrumbs that a man like you could not ignore." His gaze sharpened. "I handed you a scenario so similar to the ones you used to walk into that you could not help yourself. You did what you always do. You put on armor, you picked up a gun, you walked into the dark. A distant siren rose and fell somewhere outside, faint through the walls. Not close, not yet." Daniel heard it but did not glance away. "So what now?" he said. Diego smiled again, a slight baring of teeth that carried no warmth. "Now," he said, "we see what kind of man you really became in all that quiet." Diego let the words hang in the space between them. The rifle still rested loosely on its sling barrel, lo, his hands empty. "Here is the problem you have now," he said. "There is a girl who is not yours, who has already brought you back into a life you promised to leave. There is also a girl who is yours, sleeping in a bed with a nightlight and a bear." His eyes did not blink. "If you die here," he went on, "your daughter wakes up to strangers at the door. She grows up with stories about how her father could not stop walking into gunfire. They will say you were brave. Maybe she will believe it. Maybe it will make her hate you." He took another slow step, careful reading Daniel's shoulders, the angle of the Glock. "If you put down the gun and walk out," Diego said, I tell my men to let you go. You go home. You hold on to your quiet life with both hands. I find other ways to do my work. Work, Daniel said. The word tasted bitter. You cannot fix what you broke, Diego said. I cannot fix what you broke, but I can decide how many more people get dragged into the ruins. A faint wail drifted through the warehouse walls. A siren somewhere far off rose and dipped, then faded. Time was not a luxury. You are bluffing, Daniel said. You let me walk and you still have the girl. You still send her down whatever line you built this place for. Diego tilted his head. That is your sticking point, he said softly. Not your own life, hers. He nodded as if confirming something to himself. You came here for her, he said, because a woman begged you in your doorway at 2 a.m, and because you saw your own kid in her eyes. That was why I chose a child. His voice lost its thin humor. I am offering you a choice, he said. Not a good one, but a choice. Leave this girl to the fate you gave my brother. Walk away, live with that, and I leave you and your daughter out of my plans. Or try to save her and accept that you may die for a stranger. He let that sink in. You keep talking like this matters, Daniel said quietly, but it tells me something simple. You do not have her anymore. For the first time, a flicker of annoyance crossed Diego's face. You are a predictable man, he said. Of course you would assume the best possible outcome and hold on to it with your teeth. He shrugged. Believe what you need to believe, he said. Maybe she is already in another truck. Maybe she is closer than you think. Maybe your friend in the car never stopped working for me. You will never know for certain. That is the fun of it. The siren sounded again, closer now, layered with another. The faint rise and fall pressed through the brick. One of the wounded men moaned. Another shouted something about cops. Diego did not look away from Daniel. You signed for 17 bodies, he said. Sign for one more. Walk away. Go make breakfast for your child, and pretend you chose the right side this time. Images collided in Daniel's head. Lily at the kitchen table, feet swinging above the floor syrup on her chin. Emily in the doorway, hair in a messy knot, pretending to be annoyed that he had fed their daughter too much sugar. The market in Fallujah, a young man in a gray shirt, cigarettes crushed in his hand. A girl in a purple hoodie running for a metal door. The sirens were louder. Somewhere outside, a dog barked in frantic bursts, then cut off. You talk like this is about me, Daniel said. It is about what you want to see when you look at me. You want a monster. Some days you might even be right, but that kid is not a number. I am not walking away from her. Diego nodded once as if he had gotten the answer he expected. Then you are predictable in more ways than one, he said. His hand dropped to the rifle. Daniel fired. The shot cracked through the warehouse. Diego jerked sideways, almost as if he had expected the move. The bullet tore across his shoulder fabric, blooming dark, but he kept his feet. The rifle snapped up. The world narrowed to muzzle and light. Daniel threw himself backward, tucking behind the forklift as the rifle barked. The first round hit the metal where his head had been spraying hot fragments. The second punched through the forklift mast and glanced off the concrete near his boot. A third slammed into the side of a container, steel ringing. Pain flared along his upper arm, a hot, ripping line. For a second he thought the forklift had caught him. Then he felt the warmth spreading under his sleeve, the wet slide of blood down his ribs. He bit back a sound and pressed his shoulder tight against the grease-thick engine block. The Glock felt heavier in his hand now. The men behind the crates found their courage in the noise. Pistols barked. Bullets chewed at the forklift, at the floor, at the air. Hold them, Diego snapped in Spanish. Just hold them. Daniel rolled to the other side of the forklift, came up in a crouch and sent 2 rounds toward the stair base where he had glimpsed a leg. A man yelped and ducked back a spray of concrete chips where his knee had been. His shoulder screamed every time he moved his arm. The vest had caught nothing. The round had come in at the gap, tearing a groove along muscle. It felt deep enough to matter, shallow enough that he could still grip the gun. He tasted copper where he had bitten his tongue. Above, the office lights flicked. Someone shouted. The sirens outside wailed again, this time close enough that the air seemed to vibrate. You said you cannot fix it, Daniel muttered under his breath. Then stop making it worse. He took a breath that came out ragged, then another that steadied. Across the floor, Diego jogged backward toward the stairs, keeping his profile, small rifle held low. He fired a controlled pair in Daniel's direction, on the move more to keep heads down than to hit anything. The rounds sparked against the forklift and a crate. Time to go, someone called from above. 5 minutes, Diego replied without looking back. We are done in 3. He backed toward the far corner of the warehouse away from the side door. A larger rolling bay door at the rear rattled as someone hauled it open from inside. Cold night poured in along with the muffled echo of sirens. Headlights flared against the far wall. An engine roared to life. The smell of exhaust cut through the gunpowder. Daniel heard boots pounding towards that opening, the scrape of boxes being shoved, the clatter of metal. They were packing up whatever they could grab. He had a choice now, and it was not much better than the one Diego had offered. He could try to cut across the floor, chase the fleeing man, and hope he made it to the truck before a dozen bullets punched through him. Or he could use the last seconds of distraction to leave. He thought of Ava's small shoes on the concrete, of the way her shoulders had squared when he told her to run, of Lily's bare feet on the hallway floor, her question just hours ago. If he died here, everything stopped. He did not lower his weapon. He did not stand up and surrender. He took the third path that had always kept him alive. He backed away behind the forklift, staying low, retracing his steps along the wall, past the stacked crates and the pallets. He kept his eyes on the angles, the corners where a stray guard might still be watching. The shouts and engine noise at the rear covered the sound of his breathing. At the side door, the cold night air seeped through the crack at the bottom. The warehouse lights felt harsher behind him. He pushed the handle with his elbow and slipped out into the dark. The river wind hit his face sharp and wet. It smelled of algae and fuel and damp concrete. He pulled the door almost closed behind him, leaving it just shy of the latch in case he needed to come back. He did not plan to. He stood with his back against the brick and listened. The bay door clanged all the way up. The engine in the rear revved hard, then steadied. Tires squealed against concrete. A heavy vehicle rolled out of the warehouse and onto the service road behind the building. Headlights swept past a gap in the wall, briefly cutting across him before swinging away toward the river road. The sirens were close now, probably on the main approach. Red and blue flashes tickled the sky over the roofline. He heard the distant crunch of cruiser tires on gravel. His shoulder throbbed in time with his pulse. When he touched the wound through his shirt, his fingers came away sticky and dark. He pressed his palm there hard until stars prickled at the edges of his vision. Not here, he told himself. Not yet. Staying in the shadow of the building, he moved along the wall toward the front, keeping low. The lot in front of the warehouse was a shallow bowl of cracked asphalt and old oil stains. The white van sat where he had first seen it, lights off, doors closed. No one inside. Whoever mattered had gone out the back. The first police cruiser slid around the far corner of the street and braked hard at the sight of the open bay door. Another came in behind it, then a third tire sprang slush. Officers spilled out, guns drawn, using their doors for cover, shouting commands into the night. Daniel stayed in the blind strip along the building behind the line of their headlights. From where they stood, he was just another piece of darkness pressed against brick. He cut across the side street as the third cruiser arrived, using the movement and noise as cover. His boots hit the wet pavement and sent a small splash of dirty water up his pant legs. The wound in his shoulder protested with sharp heat. By the time he reached the block where the Honda had been, his breath sawed in and out. The pain had gone from sharp to deep, a heavy ache that made his arm feel twice its weight. The space where the Honda had parked was empty. He stopped under a bare tree and stared at the strip of curb, the smear of tire tracks leading away toward the highway. A fast inhale of relief loosened something inside his chest. Either Marissa had panicked and left early, or Ava had made it to the car and they had gone together. He had no way of knowing which. He chose the version that kept them both alive, because the alternative served nothing. He put his free hand on the rough bark of the tree and leaned into it for a second, letting the cold bite through his palm. His head swam. The night around him blurred at the edges. Farther down the block, a single streetlight flickered, then steadied. The river smells still hung in the air, mixing with exhaust from the cruisers and the faint sour of the warehouse behind him. He straightened, adjusted his jacket to hide the dark patch spreading across his shoulder, and began to walk. The road back toward the main drag felt longer than it had on the way in. Each step jarred his arm. His fingers tingled. His breath formed small clouds in front of him, rising and disappearing in the cold. Behind him, police voices echoed along the industrial strip, short-clipped commands, the crackle of radios. Someone yelled about blood on the floor. Someone else called for an ambulance. He kept going, head down. Block by block, the warehouses gave way to smaller buildings, then to the first sleepy houses with their porch lights off and curtains drawn. Sprinklers had left frozen fans of ice on some lawns. A newspaper lay forgotten on a stoop. He turned up his collar, feeling the weight of the Glock at his back, the press of the vest against his ribs, the hot wetness cooling on his skin. He thought of the kitchen clock at home. Tick, tock. The numbers would have moved on while he was here. The night had not waited for him. He focused on the thought of his front door, on the shape of his truck in the driveway, on the narrow hall that led to a room with a blue nightlight. One foot in front of the other, he walked toward it. By the time he reached the crossroads, where the industrial strip met the broader avenue, his legs felt hollow. A gas station sat on the corner, its canopy lights buzzing pumps empty. The glass front reflected him as he passed. A tall man in a dark jacket, shoulders slightly hunched, one sleeve darker than the other. He kept walking. His truck was 2 blocks down where he had left it on a side street near the main road. It sat under a lamppost, a thin crust of frost on the windshield. The Trident decal, a faded smudge on the rear glass. He fumbled his keys once before getting them into the lock. The door creaked when he opened it. The familiar smell of old upholstery and motor oil rose to meet him. He climbed in, shut the door, and sat with both hands on the wheel for several seconds, listening to the thump in his arm. The interior light showed the spreading stain on his shoulder. Deep red, nearly black. It had soaked through the shirt and into the vest straps. He turned the key. The engine came to life on the second try. The radio came on low, some talk show rerun, and he snapped it off. The drive back into the neighborhood felt disconnected, as if he were watching it from outside himself. Streetlights slid over the hood of the truck. Once a patrol car came from the opposite direction on its way toward the river lights, off sirens silent. Daniel kept his hands steady at 10 and 2 and his face neutral. He pulled into his driveway a little before 5. The sky over Denver was beginning to pale from black to a bruised gray. A neighbor's porch light clicked on automatically across the street. No curtains twitched, no one peered out. He sat for a moment, fingers stiff on the wheel. Then he reached behind the seat, grabbed an old hoodie from the back, and wrestled it on carefully over the stained shirt. The movement made his shoulder flare hot and sharp. Inside the house, the warmth hit him, bringing with it the familiar mingled sense of coffee laundry detergent and the faint lingering sweetness from the night before. He locked the door, his hand leaving a small smear of red on the deadbolt. He wiped it away with the cuff before the thought fully formed. The kitchen clock read 4:52. Tick, tock. He moved straight to the bathroom. The overhead light was too bright after the dark streets. It stabbed into his eyes and made the edges of the room buzz. He blinked against it and closed the door with his foot. In the mirror, he looked worse than he had expected. His face was paler than usual, lips pressed tight. Sweat had dried along his hairline, leaving a gritty feeling. The hoodie clung to his shoulder where the blood had soaked through. He peeled it off carefully, then the t-shirt beneath. The wound ran in a diagonal groove across the top of his shoulder, a jagged line where the bullet had carved a path. It was not pretty. It could have been worse. It wept fresh blood when he lifted his arm to see it better. He turned on the tap and let cold water run. It splashed clear, then pink, then nearly clear again as he rinsed away the worst of the mess. The sting sharpened his senses, brought him back into his body. From the cabinet under the sink, he dug out a plastic box of first aid supplies. Bandages, tape, antiseptic. He found a bottle of peroxide and poured it over the wound. It hissed and foamed. Pain bit so hard his vision went white at the edges. He gripped at the edge of the sink with his free hand and breathed through his teeth until the fizzing subsided. A towel stuffed between his teeth muffled whatever sound did escape. He dried the area, wincing when the cloth brushed raw flesh, then taped a thick pad of gauze over it, wrapping the tape around his upper arm and chest to hold it in place. By the time he finished, his hands shook. Some from blood loss, some from adrenaline, fading, some from the sudden quiet of the small bathroom after the noise of the warehouse. He pulled on a clean long-sleeve shirt from the laundry basket, wiggling it carefully over the bandage. The fabric tugged but held. The wound throbbed in time with his heartbeat. He opened the bathroom door. Lily stood in the hallway, bare feet on the wood hair, a tangled halo around her face. She wore the same unicorn pajamas, the fabric bunched at one knee. Her eyes looked bigger in the early light, dark pupils swallowing the color. "Dad," she said. Her voice was small and a little hoarse. "Where did you go?" He closed the door behind him, blocking the view of the bloody towel in the sink, the empty peroxide bottle, the red streaks near the drain. "I had to help someone," he said. It was not enough, and they both knew it. She stepped closer, nose wrinkling slightly, in a way that meant she had caught something off. Maybe the smell of peroxide, Maybe the stiffness in his posture. Is she okay? Lily asked. The lady at the door. He thought of Ava's small figure running for the exit of the empty stretch of curb where the Honda had been. I think so, he said. I think they are both okay. Lily studied his face, the way his jaw worked, the way his eyes would not quite settle. You broke your promise, she said. He did not pretend not to know which one she meant. Yeah, he said. No deflection, no buffer. I did. She looked past him toward the front of the house, as if she could still see the woman standing on the porch, bruises and all. Her fingers tightened on the sleeve of her pajamas. Did you hurt anybody? She asked. He thought of the man with the cigarette lights out behind pallets, the men clutching their legs and shoulders on the warehouse floor, Diego's shirt blooming red. Some people got hurt, he said. I tried to make sure no one died who did not have to. Her eyes searched his. He held her gaze. Mom did not like it when you went away, Lily said, but she liked that you helped people. His throat tightened. I know, he said. You came back, Lily said. You are here now. A simple observation, but it landed like something heavier. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around his waist. The contact pulled at his shoulder, but he did not flinch. He folded his good arm around her hand, resting between her shoulder blades, feeling the small, sturdy warmth of her. I am sorry I scared you, he said into her hair. It was dark, she said into his shirt. I thought maybe you did not want to stay. I want to stay, he said, more than anything. They stood like that until the clock in the kitchen ticked loud enough to remind him it still existed. The light outside the front window shifted from gray to the first hint of weak yellow. Can I have cereal? Lily asked suddenly, voice muffled. It almost made him laugh, almost. Yeah, he said. Cereal sounds perfect. She pulled back, wiping at her eyes with the heel of her hand as if nothing strange had happened. You look tired, she said, like when you tried to fix the sink all night. That was a stubborn sink, he said. She padded past him into the kitchen. He followed more slowly, careful not to favor his shoulder too much in her sight line. She dragged a chair over to the cupboard, climbed to reach the cereal box, poured a lopsided heap into a bowl and splashed milk over it. A few flakes spilled onto the table. He leaned against the counter, watching her eat, listening to the crunch between her teeth. It sounded incredibly normal. On the wall, the clock read 5:23. He made coffee mostly by muscle memory. The smell of it blooming filled the small space, threading itself through the remnants of syrup and sleep. Lily finished her cereal, rinsed her bowl in the sink with care, then wandered back down the hallway to her room. He heard the murmur of cartoons starting on her tablet, the faint echo of voices and canned laughter. He exhaled and let his head rest against the cabinet door for a moment. He knew he should call someone, a hospital, a hotline, a captain he had not spoken to in 3 years. Instead, he moved around the kitchen, wiping an already clean counter, straightening a stack of mail, anything to keep his hands busy. The day moved on. He bandaged his shoulder again later, with fresher gauze. He took 2 painkillers from the bottle he kept for old back injuries and washed them down with lukewarm coffee. He put the Glock back in the lockbox after wiping it down, fingers moving with practiced care, and spun the dial until the numbers vanished into metal. He did not take the vest off, not yet. When the sun was higher and the living room was bright enough that Lily had opened the curtains, he turned on the TV. Not to any of her shows, to the local news. They talked about traffic, a high school football game, a fire that had gutted a restaurant kitchen. Then the anchor's tone shifted. Overnight, she said, police responded to reports of gunfire at an abandoned warehouse along the South Platte. Authorities say the incident appears to be related to gang activity in the area. Footage rolled. Grainy shots of the Condor Logistics building, yellow tape around the lot, officers moving in and out of the open bay door. No sign of the side entrance he had used, no mention of a child. 3 men were transported to area hospitals with non-life-threatening injuries, the anchor went on. No arrests have been made. The investigation is ongoing. A short statement from a police spokesperson played. She spoke about crackdowns, community safety efforts to reduce gang violence. No questions about trafficking, no word about a missing 9-year-old girl. The segment ended in less than 90 seconds. Daniel stood in the doorway watching his own ghost flicker across the screen. He could almost see the path he had taken along the side of the building, even though the camera never turned that way. Lily glanced up from the floor where she sat with her markers, briefly interested in the flashing lights on the screen. Is that near here? She asked. Not too close, he said. Industrial area. She considered that, then went back to her drawing tongue, peeking from the corner of her mouth in concentration. He turned the volume down and leaned against the frame. The rest of the day moved forward. Lily had homework. There were dishes. A leaky faucet demanded a wrench. Neighbors waved from across the street, unaware of anything unusual. None of it reached the knot that had formed somewhere behind his sternum. He did not know if Marissa had made it as far as the gas station to place the call. He did not know if Ava sat somewhere safe now wrapped in a blanket, or if she was halfway to a border in a truck he had never seen. The not knowing worked under his skin like grit. That night, when Lily was finally asleep and the house was quiet again, he stood outside her door, listening to the slow rhythm of her breathing, the soft snuffle when she rolled over. Tick, tock. The kitchen clock kept steady time. Inside his head, the scene in the warehouse replayed, frame by frame, refusing to obey the hands. It took 12 days for someone to knock on the door again. In those 12 days, Daniel's shoulder turned from an angry red to a mottled yellow and purple. The wound itched under the bandage as it knit. He did the work that needed doing. He fixed a leaking toilet for the Jenkinses across the street, replaced a broken disposal for the older woman on the corner, checked Lily's math homework, burned one batch of grilled cheese and nailed the next. The nights were worse. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the green container door swinging open the empty space inside, the way Ava had tucked herself small in the corner. Sometimes in the dream she did not make it to the door. Sometimes she did, and when he followed, the lot outside was empty, the sky too bright, sirens too quiet. He woke up with the taste of concrete dust in his mouth and the phantom weight of the Glock in his hand, even though it was locked in steel, tucked back into the closet behind the same boxes. He checked the news more often than he wanted to admit. There was no follow-up on the warehouse, no mention of a missing girl found alive or dead. The story sank under newer, shinier emergencies. On the 13th morning, the knock came. Not frantic, not pounding. 3 measured taps, then a pause, then 2 more. Daniel was in the kitchen rinsing coffee grounds from the filter. Lily was at the table with a bowl of cereal, kicking her heels against the chair. He froze, hand under the faucet, eyes lifting toward the hallway. The clock on the wall read 9:07. "Expecting somebody?" Lily asked around a mouthful. "No," he said. He dried his hands on a dish towel and walked to the door. His shoulder tugged under the healed skin. He felt every step. This time he checked the peephole before his hand reached for the locks. A woman stood on the porch. Her hair was brushed back into a simple ponytail. Her face was free of bruises. The skin where the swelling had been was a yellow shadow now. She wore a clean sweatshirt and jeans. There was a small canvas backpack over one shoulder. Next to her, holding her hand, stood a girl in a purple hoodie, the fabric freshly washed, the color brighter. Her hair was combed and gathered with a plastic clip. She clutched a folded sheet of paper in her free hand. Ava. Something lifted in Daniel's chest, and something else dropped at the same time. He unlocked the deadbolt, slid the chain free, and opened the door. Marissa looked up at him with an expression he had not seen on her face before. Not just fear, not just exhaustion, something like shame and gratitude tangled together. "Hi," she said. He glanced at the street behind them. No van, no dark sedan. A dull blue compact car sat at the curb, sunlight catching the windshield. "You should not be here," he said, but there was no heat in it. "I know," she said. "We will not stay long." Lily leaned sideways in her chair in the kitchen and peered around the doorway. Her eyes widened. "That is the lady," she whispered not very quietly. "And the girl." "Ava," Marissa said, gentle. "Say hello." "Hi," Ava said. Her voice was stronger than it had been in the container. Less air, more person. "Can we talk?" Marissa asked. "Just a minute." He stepped back from the door. This time he let them inside. The living room looked even smaller, with 3 people in it. The second-hand couch, the low table, the small TV, all suddenly parts of a scene with too many players. Ava's gaze darted around, taking in everything from the cartoon playing silently on the television to the clutter of colored pencils on the table. Her eyes lingered on Lily, then on the nightlight just visible down the hall. Lily stared back, cereal spoon held in midair. "Do you want some?" she asked, lifting the bowl a little. "We have the good kind with marshmallows." Ava's mouth twitched. "I had toast," she said. "Thank you." The girls watched each other for a beat, quiet and serious, then both seemed to decide something at the same time. Lily slid off her chair, padding into the living room. Ava drifted a step closer. They ended up a few feet apart like magnets in a cautious stalemate. Daniel and Marissa moved to the side near the kitchen doorway. "I owe you something," Marissa said. She kept her voice low, but not so low the girls could not hear if they listened hard. "You do not owe me anything," he said. "You owe your kid." "I owe you the truth," she said. She laced her fingers together, knuckles whitening, then forced them to relax. "When they grabbed us," she said, "it was not random, not completely. I owed people money, bad people. It started small. I thought I could catch up. I could not. They knew where I worked, where I lived. They knew about Ava." He listened without interrupting. The morning light from the front window put a soft bar across her face, dividing light and shadow at the bridge of her nose. "They told me if I did not pay, they would take her," she said. "I thought they were bluffing. I thought they would rough me up, scare me, not touch a child. I was wrong." She swallowed. "When they took her, I panicked. Then someone new stepped in. Not like the others, smarter, colder. He said his name was Diego. He told me there was a way to get her back." Her eyes flicked up to his. "He told me about you," she said. "About your service, your record. The thing that happened in Fallujah. I did not understand half of it. I just heard one thing. If I brought you back into the game, he would let Ava go." Daniel felt his jaw tighten. "So, all that at the door," he said. "The plates, the decal, you looking desperate and lost. That was part of the show." "No," she said quickly. "The bruises were real. The fear was real. The part where I had no one else to go to was real. But yes, I knew who you were before I knocked. I knew enough to know you would not be able to ignore a kid in trouble." She looked down at the floor, then over at her daughter standing with Lily, both girls pretending not to listen. "I told myself I had no choice," Marissa said. "I told myself using you was better than losing her. I let him make you the target." He thought of Diego, in the warehouse blood on his shoulder, voice cool as he laid out his grievance like a ledger. "He wanted to prove something," Daniel said. "He wanted to prove you were still the man who shot his brother," she said. "That you could not be anything else if he pushed the right out. That you would go right back to picking up a gun." She rubbed her arms as if the memory of the warehouse air still sat on her skin. "He said if you came and you killed that meant nothing had changed," she said. "That all your quiet life was just a pause. And if I stayed home," Daniel said, "if I left you on the porch." "He would have killed her," she said. "He said he would make me listen." Her eyes shone now, but the tears did not fall. "I am not asking you to forgive any of that," she said. "I just thought you should know the rules of the game you walked into." He watched Ava, who had taken a step closer to Lily. They were talking now, in low voices, about the markers, about the cartoon characters on Lily's pajamas. Ava held the folded piece of paper tighter in her hand as if waiting for a cue. "How did it end?" he asked. "For you." "Once you hit them," she said. "Once the cops showed up, it went sideways. Diego left, fast. The others scattered. One of them had my bag, my phone. He dropped it when he ran. Ava and I found each other near the river road. We got in the car and drove to my sister's an hour away. She has a spare room and strong locks." She gave a humorless half smile. "I called a friend who works with an advocacy group," she said. "She called some people with 3-letter acronyms who know about men like Diego. They are looking. I do not know if they will find him." "He is still out there," Daniel said. "Yes," she said, "but so are you." That did not feel as reassuring as she seemed to think it did. Ava tugged on her sleeve. "Can I give it to him?" she asked, tilting her head toward Daniel. Marissa nodded. Ava stepped forward, sneakers squeaking slightly on the hardwood. "This is for you," she said, holding out the folded paper. He wiped his palm on his jeans before taking it. The page was from a cheap sketch pad, one edge ragged. In crayon, thick lines and bright colors filled the space. A man in a dark shirt, drawn bigger than everyone else, stood near the middle, one arm stretched out. A smaller figure in a purple hoodie held his hand. Behind them was a big rectangle, with a green door open wide. Above, a yellow sun peeked over the top of a boxy building. In the corner, a car sat on a street, a crooked line of blue coming from the exhaust. Across the top, in careful block letters, she had written, "Thank you for finding me." His throat closed. He had to clear it before he could speak. "This is good work," he said. "You remembered the door." "I did not remember your face right," she said. "My mom said you look like you have not slept in a while." "Your mom is very honest," he said. Ava smiled, quick and small, then stepped back to Lily's side. Lily looked up at him too, something thoughtful in her eyes. "We are leaving Denver," Marissa said quietly. "My sister lives north. New school, new job, new everything. They are helping us change what needs changing." She hooked her fingers in the strap of her backpack. "I did not want to go without saying thank you," she said, "even if it came with the rest." He nodded. "You got her out," he said. "That is what matters." She blinked once slowly, as if she had not expected him to let her off that easily. He did not feel like he was. They stayed a few minutes longer. The girls traded a few details about favorite shows, the good swings in the park, the worst vegetables. When Marissa said it was time, Ava looked disappointed but did not argue. At the door, Lily spoke up. "You can come back sometime," she told Ava. "If your mom says it is okay." Ava nodded. "If we are in town," she said. "Maybe." Daniel stood on the porch and watched them walk to the blue car. The morning light made their shadows long on the sidewalk. Marissa opened the passenger door for Ava, checked the back seat out of habit now, then went around to the driver's side. As she started the engine, she looked back once. Their eyes met. She gave him a small, tired nod. He returned it. The car pulled away from the curb and turned at the corner. For a moment, he could see the top of Ava's head through the rear window. Then they were gone. He went back inside, closed the door, and leaned against it. The house felt different, not bigger or smaller, just shifted. On the coffee table, the drawing lay where he had set it. He picked it up and carried it to the kitchen. The fridge door was crowded with Lily's work. Flowers, a lopsided dinosaur, a stick-figure family under a sun. He found a space and smoothed the new picture into place with a magnet. The words at the top sat at his eye level. He looked at them longer than he meant to. Lily came up beside him, tilting her head to see. "She is good at drawing," she said. "Yeah," he said. "She is." "You found her?" Lily said. "Like it says." "We found each other," he said. She considered that. "You help people a lot," she said, "not just pipes." "Sometimes I make bigger messes first," he said. She shrugged in a way that was pure Emily dismissing his self-criticism with a small flick of motion. "Maybe you could help people on purpose," she said, "when no one is getting shot." The suggestion landed lightly, but it did not leave. Later, when Lily went outside to ride her bike up and down the sidewalk, he sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad and a pen. The house was quiet, except for the ticking of the clock and the occasional clatter of tires on the front walk. He wrote Emily's name at the top of the page. Under it, he started to list the things he knew how to do that did not involve a rifle or a pistol. Listen, sit, make coffee, call someone who knows more than he does, patch a wall, fix a lock, keep watch. The page did not look like much when he finished just a few scattered words in his uneven handwriting. He smoothed a hand over the paper anyway. The air in the kitchen still smelled faintly of syrup from breakfast and of crayon wax from the drawing on the fridge. Outside, Lily's laughter floated in for a second, then faded as she pedaled farther down the block. The clock on the wall kept time. 4 months later, the sign on the front window read, "Emily's Table," in simple black letters. The storefront sat on a side street off Colfax, squeezed between a nail salon and a tax prep office. The glass window was half frosted for privacy, half clear so the light could spill onto the sidewalk. Inside, the place smelled of coffee, old wood, and something sweet that usually lived in a muffin tin. On a Tuesday afternoon, the space held 6 people and felt full. An older man in a battered army jacket sat at the table near the window, fingers wrapped around a mug that had long since cooled. His eyes were on the street, but his words drifted back toward the counter. "Some nights I still hear it," he said, not specifying what. He did not need to. "Like the engine is right here in the room." Daniel stood behind the counter, leaning on his forearms, listening. He did not push. He did not ask for details. He let the man talk until the words ran out. When they did, he refilled the mug without comment. The man nodded, small and grateful, and went back to watching the sidewalk. At the corner table, a woman with a fading bruise on her cheek and a stack of legal papers in front of her scrolled through her phone. Every now and then, she checked the door, as if expecting someone. Her shoulders were tight. Beside her, a younger woman in a t-shirt that said Peer Advocate sat with her just present, occasionally nudging a tissue box closer. Near the back, under a bulletin board covered in flyers and business cards, a couple of kids sprawled on a rug with colored pencils and construction paper. Lily lay on her stomach, chin in her hands, coloring in a lopsided dragon. Next to her, Ava outlined a house with too many windows. Their heads were close together, hair nearly touching. "You cannot put the sun there," Lily said. "It will hide behind the roof." "It is a rising sun," Ava said. "It is allowed." They both laughed quietly in easy sound. On the counter beside the register that hardly ever saw use a donations jar sat with a handwritten sign, "Coffee is free, so is talking. Pay if you can stay if you need." A bell over the door jingled. A man in his 20s stepped in, shoulders hunched against the cold eyes scanning the room in a quick sweep. He wore a hooded sweatshirt and jeans, hands buried deep in the front pocket. A veteran ball cap was crumpled in one fist. He hesitated in the doorway until Daniel lifted a mug in silent question. "Black," the guy said. He took the cup with a muttered thanks and drifted toward the bulletin board, pretending to read the flyers, not quite ready to sit. Daniel watched him out of the corner of his eye, tracking the way the man's gaze snagged on certain words. PTSD, group, hotline. The numbers were there if he wanted them. No one rushed him. The afternoon slid into evening that way. People came and went. Some talked. Some stared into their drinks. Some cried a little and pretended they had something in their eye. Daniel poured coffee, wiped tables, listened where he could, pointed quietly at the bulletin board when someone asked what else there was. When the sky outside turned the color of bruised plums and the neon sign at the tax office flickered on, Lily wandered up to the counter. "Mom says we have to leave soon," she said. Marissa stood by the doorcoat on car keys in hand. She had put on a little weight. Her face looked less drawn. She checked her phone, then glanced up, catching Daniel's eye. She gave him a small half wave. "Finish up," he told Lily. "We have to close soon, too." Lily nodded and darted back to Ava. They huddled over their papers again, racing to finish before time ran out. When they finally slid into their coats, Ava pressed a new drawing into his hand. This one showed a table. 4 stick figures sat around it, their proportions slightly better now. One big one with a square jaw, 2 smaller ones with long hair, one shorter with a scribble of curls. Steam rose from cups on the table. Outside the drawn window, a sun was half visible over the edge of a boxy building. "It is us," Ava said. "At your place." "It is our place," Lily corrected. Daniel smiled. "Looks just right," he said. They left in a swirl of cold air and the sound of goodbyes. The older man in the army jacket lifted his hand to the girls as they passed. The woman with the bruise tucked her papers away and left with the advocate at her side. By 8, the chairs were empty. Daniel flipped the sign on the door to closed, then moved through the room, wiping tables, straightening chairs, collecting abandoned napkins. The quiet felt different from the quiet in his house. Not better, just filled with echoes. He dumped the grounds from the coffee maker, rinsed the pot, and hung the dish towel over the sink. He was wiping a water ring from the counter when something slid through the mail slot near the floor with a soft metallic scrape. He straightened, listening. No follow-up knock. No footsteps lingering on the sidewalk. He walked over and picked up the envelope. Plain white, no return address, his name not written anywhere. The paper felt normal in his hand. His neck prickled anyway. He opened it. A single photograph slid out into his palm. It showed a sun-bleached plaza somewhere south of here. A church with a bell tower stucco peeling. Plastic chairs under an awning. People in shirt sleeves moved in the background, faces turned away. In the center, looking straight at the camera, stood Diego Morales. He wore a light shirt open at the throat and held a beer bottle between 2 fingers. His shoulder was no longer in a sling. A thin white scar traced the line where Daniel's bullet had gone through. His smile was small and private, like a joke only he knew. Behind him, over his shoulder, the ocean glinted blue, water again, always water. On the back of the photograph, in neat block letters, someone had written, "Your move, sailor." The words sat in Daniel's hand, heavy. He could feel how easy it would be to reach for a phone, to ask old contacts to dig, to pull at the thread of the plaza, the church, the coastline, to find him, to finish something that had started in a burned-out city years ago. The room seemed to tilt toward that option slightly. The way the ground tilts toward a river, not enough to notice unless you drop something and watch it roll. He pictured it. The hunt, the flight, the smell of jet fuel and sweat, the weight of weapons picked up and checked as if no time had passed, the old rhythm sliding back into his bones. He pictured Lily waking up to find a note on the table instead of a father in the kitchen. His hand closed around the photo until the edges bit his palm. Across from the counter near the bulletin board, a small framed picture hung on the wall. Emily, in a stolen moment, years before, flour dusting her cheek. A wooden spoon in her hand, laughing at something off camera. He had put it there without thinking too much about it on opening day. Her eyes, caught mid-laugh, seemed to look past him toward the window, toward the world outside. He opened his fist. The photograph lay flat on his palm, again Diego's gaze still boring into the lens, into the person holding it. "Not this time," Daniel said almost under his breath. He walked to the small office in the back, opened the drawer of the cheap metal filing cabinet, and took out a compact paper shredder he had picked up second-hand. He plugged it in. The ready light came on with a faint green glow. He fed the photograph into the slot. The machine hummed. The image disappeared an inch at a time. Face bottle ocean ink on the back, all turned into thin strips that fell into the bin with a dry whisper. The sound was not dramatic. It did not feel like an ending. It felt like choosing where not to go. He unplugged the shredder and set it back in the drawer. On the way out, he flipped off the lights. The interior slipped into shadow, the streetlight from outside making rectangles on the floor. The sign on the door shone faintly in reverse. Elbat Ilaime. At home, the house greeted him with darkness and the faint glow of the oven clock. He hung his jacket on the hook by the door, towing off his boots. The scar on his shoulder ached in the colder air, a low familiar throb. He went into the kitchen and pulled eggs, milk, and bread from the fridge. The motions were automatic now. Crack, whisk, dip. The pan warmed on the stove, a pat of butter melting, releasing that rich, comforting smell that had been following him in and out of memories for months. When the first slice of bread hit the pan, it sizzled. The sound filled the small room. He watched the edges go golden, flipped it with a practiced flick of the wrist. Footsteps padded in behind him. Lily stood in the doorway, hair a mess from sleep blanket print still creased on her cheek. She squinted at the stove. "Is it Sunday already?" she asked. "Kind of," he said. "I could not sleep." She climbed onto her usual chair at the table, resting her chin on her hands. "Can we have the cinnamon?" she said. "We can have all the cinnamon," he said. He put a plate in front of her. French toast dusted with cinnamon sugar, a small river of syrup pooling at one side. Her face brightened in a way that never got old. She took a bite, eyes closing for a second as the sweetness hit. "This is better than the last time," she said around a mouthful. "Practice," he said. "I get a lot of that now." They ate together in the warm circle of the kitchen. Outside, the street was still dark. No cars passed. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn sounded low and mournful, then faded. When her plate was empty and the last drops of syrup had been chased with her fork, Lily leaned back in her chair. "Can we watch a movie?" she asked. "The one with the talking dog that thinks he is a superhero." "Sure," he said. "We have time." She pulled a blanket off the back of the couch and curled up, leaving space for him. He sat down carefully, shoulder twinging, and she leaned into his side without asking, head against his ribs. On the screen, bright colors flashed, characters shouted over explosions that looked less impressive now. Lily laughed at the same places she always did. At one especially ridiculous pratfall, she snorted mid-sip of milk and had to grab a napkin, giggling. "You did it again?" he said. "It is the dog," she said, laughing. "He is stupid." He smiled, watching her more than the movie. Later, when she drifted off her head heavy on his lap, he muted the TV and just listened to her breathe. Slow, even, completely unaware of anything that had happened in a warehouse by the river. He carried her to bed, tucking her in under the blankets. The nightlight painted its familiar blue glow across the wall. Before he left the room, he touched the doorframe, fingers tracing the grain. In the hallway, the kitchen clock stared back at him from its place on the wall. The hands pointed to 2:17. Tick-tock. The sound was the same as always. For the first time in a long time, it did not feel like a countdown. It felt like a simple thing doing its small job, keeping time while he did his. He walked back to the kitchen, rinsed the plates, wiped down the stove. The house smelled of cinnamon and butter and a little bit of dish soap. In the quiet, with his daughter asleep in the next room and a whole city breathing outside, he stood there for a moment and let the ordinary weight of it settle on his shoulders. It was not light, it fit. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.